You're on mute, Vanessa.
Schoolgirl error. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's webinar, part of the Lincolnshire Climate Summit. And tonight we're talking about community-led action on climate change. We've got a really good panel set up for you tonight. We're going to be talking about parish councils, community groups, cultural services, and then toolkits and information that can help support you with your knowledge base as well. So I'd like to start the evening by introducing Richard Porter, who is from Netlham Parish Council, and he's going to be talking to us about the climate change strategy that Netlham Parish Council are working on.
Hi everyone. Thanks Vanessa and Ellen, and to all the organisers of the event. My name's Richard Porter. I'm a parish councillor in Netlham. And I'm going to speak about the climate change strategy that Netlham Parish Council are currently working on. Just to declare another interest, in real life, I actually work for Lincolnshire County Council's Transport Services team, but I'm speaking tonight in my role as a parish councillor. Netlham is a village a few miles northeast of Lincoln. We have about 1,700 houses and about 3,500 people in the village. I joined the parish council in September 2020 specifically to work on a climate change strategy for the parish. It seemed to me that there were some actions on climate change that have to be taken at the highest levels, for example, government funding research or passing legislation, and other choices have to be done at the lowest level by individuals. For example, people might lower their thermostats or choose to become vegan. But in between those two, it seemed to me that there was a gap for actions to be taken by communities. Maybe if 3,000 people in our community work together, we could achieve things that we can't as individuals. And so that's what we were trying to do in Netlham. I'd like to stress that in Netlham, we're really only just beginning this journey. We're at the start of working on this, and if you ask people in Netlham, probably most people wouldn't know that this strategy was going on. So I can't tell you right now if it's going to work or not, but I can at least outline what we're aiming for. When I joined the parish council in September 2020, I began researching climate change in more detail. I started talking to lots of other local organisations, Lincolnshire County Council, West Lindsey, City of Lincoln, neighbouring parishes, businesses, bus companies, charities, community groups, all in the village, to find out what they were working on. And having those conversations convinced me there were plenty of things that weren't being tackled, and that the parish council was the right organisation to take the lead on climate change actions in our community. Other levels of government have far more staff and far more funding to tackle climate change, but I still think that parish councils have a vital role to play. If I could use a Royal Mail analogy, the Royal Mail handle millions of letters and parcels. They've got highly sophisticated sorting technology and automated transport logistics, but at the end of the line, they still need a human being to walk up to your door and deliver your post. And it's that last step in the chain where I think parish councils can fit in tackling climate change, either in taking actions on their own or in helping other areas of local government and business achieve their aims. So whilst parish councils are small organisations, they know their areas in a lot of detail, and they've got personal connections with many of the residents. So I think parish councils can add a lot to this process. So I drafted a climate change strategy for the village. I wanted to be ambitious, to be creative, and to be optimistic. And I came up with a list of 50 things that I felt that we could do as a parish council. The idea was to do lots of small things that would cumulatively have a meaningful impact on our carbon emissions. I wrote those 50 actions up as a climate change strategy for Netlham, and I'm pleased to say that this was adopted by the parish council in May 2021. Since then, we've been working on implementing the list. We've established some working groups, and we've had some great volunteers come forward from the community. So it's a good mix of councillors and volunteers who are working on this. Our actions roughly split under these 8 headings. The parish council itself, so the first strand is to look at ourselves. Can we switch to more sustainable supplies of energy to our properties? Can our buildings be more energy efficient? Can we use more sustainable supplies? Do we bank with the most responsible banks? Can we eliminate single-use plastics? These are the kind of things that we're starting to look at. We lease a petrol van that we were hoping to switch to an electric van this autumn, but actually we couldn't find one. No suppliers seem to have one available. But those are the kind of things that we're looking at as an organisation ourselves. Recycling and reusing, well, we've been working with West Lindsey District Council to hopefully install some recycling bins in key public areas across the village. We're just about to sign up to some TerraCycle products to expand the range of goods that can be recycled in Netlham. And the schools and other organisations in the village are willing to help us with that. I'm currently looking at whether a community auction, like the one that's run in Reepham and Cherry Willingham, might also be viable in Netlham. We're looking at what gift and sharing economies already exist in Netlham and see if they might be expanded. In terms of transport, we're looking at how we might encourage more people to travel by bus. Netlham's well served by buses, so we want to work with bus operators to improve the range of tickets they offer. We want to promote information on live bus tracking so that people can have confidence that their bus is coming. Make sure people who are eligible for a bus pass know how to apply for one, to ensure people know what the Call Connect service is and how to use it. I visited all 40 of the bus stops in the parish and reported various different issues back to LCC, litter and overgrown branches, inaccurate timetables where timetables could be installed, that kind of thing, to try and make sure that the access points for bus transport are all up to scratch. Netlham's also in cycle distance of Lincoln, and we've done quite a bit of work to try and improve cycle links to Lincoln as well. We've been liaising with LCC to encourage infrastructure improvements. We've installed cycle racks at different locations across the village. I'm looking at bike amnesties, bike auctions, whether we might put on some cycle lessons for adult cyclists in the village, that kind of thing. And then in terms of cars, maybe we can be looking at a car club for people's second cars. Instead of people owning second cars, maybe a car club might work for that kind of thing in the village. We want to increase leisure opportunities within Netlham, the thinking being that if there are more things to do in the village, then people will drive less to other places. So we're trying to increase our field path and bridleway network by liaising with local landowners to see if we might get permissive access across their land. We're improving and developing our children's play areas. Lincolnshire County Council funded us to create 2 interactive walks with the Go Jauntly app. We made a secret agent trail for children and a local history walk for adults. And I'm in the early stages. We're looking at creating some kind of augmented reality experience for the village. Tied in with this, we've had to start thinking about Netlham as a destination. There are actually quite a few things to do here that might attract visitors in. So we need to encourage inbound journeys to be made sustainably, which loops back to some of the things I've just mentioned about bus ticketing offers and cycling infrastructure. Topographically, Netlham essentially sits in a bowl in the ground with a river running through the bottom of it. So flooding is a risk for us, and we want to work with LCC to understand increased flood risks due to climate change and how they might be mitigated. We're also looking at opportunities for significant tree planting and rewilding projects in the village, and I'm hopeful that we might have already found a way forward with some of those. Planning and housing, energy efficiency and consumption by houses across the parish is something we need to look at. We've not really started that in a lot of detail, but obviously we know that's an area we need to focus on. Another thing on the list is planning applications. We've had a few planning applications recently where we feel that the sustainability aspects of it have not been fully considered by the relevant organisations, and we think it's important that they are. That said, for us, the Central Links Local Plan Review has some promising proposals in it around sustainability. Under research, I'm not a climate expert, so I found research really important. There's lots of work out there to be inspired by. There's lots of funding available, but it all needs looking down and chasing down. We're also starting to organise a series of Zoom talks in the village. We're going to try and invite knowledgeable speakers along to see what appetite there is for attending those kind of events within the public for building knowledge and starting a discussion around climate change. And finally, relationships. As I mentioned earlier, talking to other organisations and building relationships has been crucial to help us get started on this work programme. I've talked to a lot of people to understand what they're working on and what we're working on, to identify where we might overlap and help each other out. A good example is that I'm keen we make our community available for testing out ideas. It might be that West Lindsey District Council want to trial something and they need a village to be a pilot area, and I'd like us to be a community that's open to that. So that's a brief summary of what we're looking at. If you're interested, Nettlum's list of 50 actions, you can find it on our Parish Council Facebook page or on our Parish Council website. As I say, it's early days for us. We've only recently established our working groups, so we're very much at the beginning of our work on this. But I do have a few little success stories just to briefly mention. The first thing is we made a grass maze on one of the children's play areas in the village. We decided back in February, I think, just to let the grass in this area of the play area grow really long. And so we just left it for a few months and then we mowed a maze into it. We opened that, I think it was in May. And that's been like a really nice little natural addition to a play area. It's had a lot of, bees and butterflies, and lots of children have enjoyed, just messing around in the long grass. And, it was a good catalyst for us to sort of start talking about some of our climate change issues and why we'd made that. But that was, an easy and free activity to add to one of our play areas. I mentioned that we'd had some support from Lincolnshire County Council to create 2 walks on the Go Jauntly app. We made a secret agent trail, which was aimed at children, and that we launched that in time for the Easter holidays, and that was really well used. We've just released a local history walk to encourage wider exploration of the field paths and bridleways around the village. If you're interested, the Go Jauntly app is free. You can download it. If you just search for Nettlum, you'll find our 2 walks that are on there. Finally, this is just an example of where we've been able to work with LCC to encourage some road resurfacing. The image on the left is one of the roads into Nettlum, and as you can see, there was an old utilities trench that had been dug there for some pipe or other, and the surface of it had really deteriorated, and so it was full of uneven bits of potholes and uneven tarmac. And as you can see, that trench is exactly where a cyclist would need to ride on the left-hand side of the road. Well, that's now been resurfaced, and you can see on the right what the surface of the road looks like now. It's far more encouraging place for people to cycle. So I'll just finish with a few key messages. I just want to stress that this is we're at an early stage on this journey. We think we know what we want to do to start with. We know we need to engage further with the wider community and build awareness of the project. And once we've done these 50 actions, we need to come up with another more ambitious next 50 actions for us to tackle as we go forward. I think parish councils are the right organisations to take leadership on this issue in their communities. I think they can help normalise the conversation around climate change. If you're interested in doing this in your parish, I'd encourage you to look around. There's lots of great things going on there. I've been really inspired by what other parishes have done, both in Lincolnshire and further afield. There's lots of good ideas to steal. Many of the things on our list of 50 actions offer multiple benefits. They're things that can help enhance the parish, as well as hopefully reducing our carbon emissions. So each thing on that list really achieves 2 aims. And we found that as a good way of engaging people and encouraging people to get behind the list. I think it's good to ask for volunteers, but make sure you can deliver on what you offer for them. My experience is that people are very willing to help out if they genuinely think something will come of their efforts. I've been really pleased at some of the volunteers that have come forward to help with this. We've got some really very good and knowledgeable people that are willing to help us out, and that's fantastic. And finally, just to say that it seems to me with climate change, it's easy to feel helpless and it's easy to feel hopeless, but I think there are actions communities can take that will have a meaningful impact. But we need to be those things I mentioned. We need to be ambitious, to be creative, and to be optimistic. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions now or later, or there's an email address if you want to drop us a line. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks. That's great. Thanks ever so much, Richard. I mean, I know we had early conversations a few months ago when you were just starting to put this together, so it's really interesting to see how things are coming along. I love the fact that you did do the grass maze, and that that's been an established thing in one of your playgrounds now, and the children are enjoying that. That's great to hear. I don't know if I've mentioned in the past that Doddington Hall were doing a rewilding project. Maybe there's a relationship there to build to see how they're they're developing things, and maybe what you can learn from that one as well. And then, yeah, the multiple benefits that you talked about, I think that's always a really good way of helping people to come into ideas and, you know, find the thing that appeals to them, the benefit that most appeals to that member of your audience, so that they can support you on this journey as well. So no, I think that's great. We're going to do a Q&A at the end, hopefully. So if anybody's got any questions for Richard, please do put them in the Q&A box, and we shall go through those after everybody's had the chance to do their presentation. So next we've got Kim from Cultural Services at Lincolnshire County Council. So she's going to be talking to us about everything that is happening in their service.
Guys, I'm just trying to get hold of my presentation, so bear with me. So can I just check, can everyone see my slide and hear me okay?
Yeah, that's all fine. Thanks, Kim.
Yeah. Okay, sorry about that slight delay, IT, as always. Yeah, so good evening, everyone. It's great to have been asked to contribute to this discussion today. And I'd like to thank Vanessa from the sustainability team for giving me the opportunity to do so. I'm Kimberly Vickers, and I'm the General Manager at Lincoln Castle, and I'm going to talk to you about the steps that Lincolnshire County Council's Cultural Service are taking in order to better understand and reduce their environmental impact, and the vital role that our community plays in supporting us as we embark on that journey. I'm also going to highlight how our public programme is being used to engage our audiences and generate greater awareness of environmental sustainability through discussion, action and debate. But before I do that, I just wanted to give you a brief overview of who we are and what we do. So this slide shows some of the sites that make up Cultural Services. It really is a fantastic collection of sites, ranging from the social history mecca that is the Museum of Lincolnshire Life, to the Lincolnshire Archives, who are the repository for the county's written history dating right back to the 10th century. By any standard, Lincolnshire has such a rich history and heritage, and there are very few places in the UK that can compete with its range of histories and that sense of continuity over time. So we're very fortunate enough to act as custodians for these incredible wonders and curiosities. And as well as our core offer, the service is also made up of teams supporting museum collections, heritage skills and learning. And in typical times, we'd also have a wide-ranging public programme of events and exhibitions. And this is just a snapshot of the types of events and exhibitions we have delivered previously. And they really help to demonstrate how, as a service, we're constantly exploring new and distinctive ways to share Lincolnshire's stories and connect with our audiences and communities. We really seek to improve the visitor experience, to drive our visitor engagement, and in doing so, this really helps to secure and support our long-term financial sustainability. And there are, of course, our wider economic impacts brought about by the activity that we deliver. And this slide captures some of the key figures for the year 2019. You'll see that we had over 350,000 visitors to our core sites, and almost 80% of those were within an hour's drive of our venues, and that's an important insight that I'll touch on later. But it's not just the footfall that we generate. We have a number of volunteers that support our sites, and the employees that work with us, the events that we deliver, you know, our supply chain, our contractors and digital presence. It just seeks to illustrate the entire ecosystem that's connected to the work that we do. And I guess these were predominantly the means by which we measured our performance and success. Needless to say, our awareness of our cumulative impact on the environment was not necessarily something that we had built into this framework. So I just want to tell you a bit more about the Low Carbon Lincoln Castle project. As a service, we are directly connected to our audience trends and behaviours, and we were becoming increasingly aware that consumers were actively seeking out experiences and organisations that aligned with their own personal values, and that value for money was not necessarily a key motivator for a visit to a site. And alongside that, Lincolnshire County Council announced its commitment to achieving net zero carbon by 2050 with the launch of its Green Master Plan. So bringing those two particular aspects together and working collaboratively with the sustainability team and Delta Simons, it's resulted in a really innovative pilot project for Lincolnshire County Council, whereby Lincoln Castle is aiming to be a zero carbon visitor attraction by 2030. Now, this project has involved us getting a much greater understanding of our own carbon footprint. And that was understood by an energy audit that we had carried out that also looked at how we were procuring and where we were purchasing things from. And it also involved engagement sessions with staff, volunteers, and obviously our visitors, which has enabled us to really effectively map out decarbonisation pathways to reach net zero. But as you'll appreciate, balancing the sensitivity of the site as a scheduled ancient monument presents particular challenges with regards to the route that we will take to get to net zero. Our on-site carbon footprint equated to 124 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent from gas and electricity consumed at the castle. But based on visitor travel surveys, it's estimated that a further 648 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent is emitted annually from people that travel to and from the castle. And whilst we want more people to visit and enjoy the site, we recognise that travel is a key contributor to our carbon footprint. So we're going to be working with Lincolnshire County Council sustainability team, external partners, other services within the organisation, and of course our visitors, in order to enhance the sustainable travel options to Lincoln and surrounding areas. And of course we also want to engage our staff and volunteers to be ambassadors for new ways of working and to embody sustainability behaviours throughout their working practices. So this really is an exciting opportunity to lead on an innovative project within the organisation. And of course, our museum spaces are already highlighting these key messages in exhibitions, including the Natural History Museum's Wildlife Photographer of the Year, which opened at the Collection Museum in July. This world-renowned exhibition features images which capture animal behaviour, spectacular species, and just the breathtaking diversity of the natural world. And it really helps to shine a light on these stories and species around the world, as well as encourage a future of advocating for the planet. And it's anticipated that this year's international tour alone will be seen by over 1 million people. Next month, the Collection Museum and Art Gallery will also host an award-winning international photographers exhibition called Our Plastic Ocean by Mandy Barker. And that exhibition addresses the current global crisis of marine plastic pollution. So the collection is collaborating with Plastic Free Lincoln to provide further support and interpretation on single-use plastic reduction, and a public programme of events, including a talk with the artist Mandy Barker, will also be scheduled. The collection will be running an artisan market during the exhibition period with a relaunched repair cafe, which will be run by Plastic Free Lincoln. So community and collaboration are really striking features of the approach that we take to raising awareness. And it's also worth mentioning at this point that all of our sites have each signed up to the Plastic Free Pledge. And of course, in this slide, we show the collection that will be home to Gaia, which is a touring artwork by the UK artist Luke Jaram, and that will be at the Collection Museum from March to May next year. A beautiful installation which features detailed NASA imagery of the Earth's surface. So the work will be accompanied by a varied programme again of events, talks and workshops, and another opportunity for the Collection Museum to align with Plastic Free Lincoln. Our learning team are also taking steps to support raising awareness and action. Our Patch of Earth is a new learning team project, which will be based at the Museum of Lincolnshire Life in 2022. The theme of the project is linked to environmental responsibility, well-being and community, and they'll be exploring a whole range of creative ideas that will influence the development of a new museum secret garden. And they're calling on schools to get involved through a whole host of ways, including workshops, sharing project ideas, creating projects that can link to the garden design and environmental responsibility themes, or they're really interested in new ideas that they haven't even heard of yet. So they're very excited to glean your ideas and inputs, and the website, which will take you through to their contact details, is included on this slide. So our commitment to reducing our environmental impact really starts to centre on 3 pillars of our activity: place, people and programme. And community collaboration will be key to supporting the delivery of this. It's our responsibility to integrate environmental sustainability into a framework which has traditionally focused on financial sustainability alone, but the two really should go hand in glove. So this slide captures those 3 pillars. And I just wanted to end on an example that kind of beautifully illustrates the positive change that happens when all of these elements combine. So the visitor experience manager at the castle, Caroline Ward, recently sourced a new line of greeting cards for the shop. And the cards are unique because for each one that is purchased, a tree is planted. And inside the card, there's also a seed token. So the cards are 100% recycled, they're printed using renewable energy, and they are just so popular in our shop at the moment. And I think they're just a great example of that highlights that conscious consumerism, where people are shopping in ways that make a positive social and environmental impact. So thank you for listening. I think these slides might be made available to you all as well, but I have put my contact details on there if anybody has any particular follow-up questions to that. Thank you.
Lovely, thanks, Kim. That was a really interesting presentation. I love the fact that the venues are collaborating with community groups. I think that's a really exciting way of engaging with new audiences and bringing different people into spaces and expanding these conversations that we're having with people. So I think that's a really wonderful thing to hear about. And the other thing I wanted to pick up on was that final point you made about conscious consumerism. You know, I think that that's something that's really starting to bed in with people. People are wanting to make those extra ask those extra questions internally to themselves before they start purchasing something. So I think that, you know, somewhere like the castle, if they're able to offer a slightly higher end product that people are actually willing to hunt out and come to you specifically for, then you know, I think that's a really important development as well. So thanks for your presentation. And then next I'm inviting Kate to speak. You're welcome. I'm inviting Kate to speak about the sustainability toolkit that's available through City of Lincoln Council. So welcome, Kate.
Hi, thank you, Rebecca. Vanessa, sorry. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, I really just wanted to, so I work for the City of Lincoln Council as the climate change manager, and a group of us came together from Siemens, the university, Transition Lincoln, and we wanted to set up a network of a sort of a community network, which we titled the Lincoln Climate Commission, by a way of addressing that area-wide carbon reduction that we need to achieve across the city if we're going to achieve a net zero target. And that organisation has grown, and we now have around 38 members made up fairly evenly of public sector organisations, and that includes the county council, city council. We have a third of them are made up of the private sector, so business community, and then a third are community representatives, so they represent a range of community groups or residents of Lincoln that that want to be involved in climate action and partake in a range of activities. One of the actions that we set ourselves was to pull together a toolkit, a range of information that's out there already, most of it, some of it we've put out there, but most of it is out there already, that is actually quite difficult to find or navigate when you're searching Google or website for useful information. So we developed the toolkit, which I'm just clicking the link to now, hopefully it should appear, with the help of a communications expert who was able to design the toolkit for us. And Vanessa, can you just confirm that that is showing what I don't want to be talking about?
All I can see at the moment is the title slide with the sustainability toolkit on there. I've seen you click, but nothing's. The
link isn't working. Okay,
yeah,
I'll come out of that and I shall try and go straight into the. I'll go direct to it then. Is that showing now? So it's a web-based toolkit which is updated fairly regularly, and it's divided into different sections. So I'm just going to show you the first screen is around what the toolkit offers. So it's basically a one-stop shop for all things sustainability. Useful tools and information that people can access to introduce sustainability into their own lifestyle. And it's a little bit about the Lincoln Climate Commission, and at the top of the toolkit is a link to the Climate Commission with a whole range of information about what's happening around climate change in Lincoln to keep everybody up to date. But it's divided into different sections. So we have a saving energy at home section, which is the first one, with links to grants that are available. These are available across the whole of Greater Lincolnshire, so it's not just Lincoln specific, and things like the links for Warmer Homes grants, and they've recently introduced the Green Homes grant, which is available to people who are deemed as living on a low income, and that's available across the whole of Lincolnshire. This is more information about that. There's useful bits of information around, for instance, there's a tool that you can access to find out the energy mix of in your household. It'll identify based on your postcode what your local substation is and what the current mix is at any one time. It's called a carbon tracer toolkit, so there's a link to that on there. It's a really useful way of working out when to put your washing machine on, because it'll tell you when a high proportion of your energy is from solar or wind at any one time, and you can operate household equipment at a time when you know that the national grid is a high proportion of renewable. And then there's a really useful bit of information on national guidance, so independent guidance on energy saving advice and energy switch. We've also got a section on waste, so some of these are links to more information about plastic-free Lincoln. Richard mentioned setting up the TerraCycle scheme in Nettleham. So there's a link there to how you can set up your own TerraCycle scheme, or just check the map to find out who's doing what in your area. And this is UK-wide. In our office, for instance, in our main City Hall building, we have a lady who collects crisp packets for TerraCycle, and she does it in our local community, but she also collects them in City Hall. So every kitchen in City Hall has a box where you can put a crisp packet. So they usually recycle things that are quite difficult, quite expensive to recycle, so they're not available in your green waste collection or your recycling waste collection. But you can find all sorts of unusual items that you probably collect at home still, and you may find somebody locally who actually collects those. Also information about water bottle refill stations. So City of Lincoln, for instance, has around 70-80 locations. They're sort of usually retail outlets, hotels, restaurants, that will allow you to come in and refill your water bottle, because it's something that you would probably feel awkward about asking to do. And there's two of the pubs on the Brayford are actually signed up to the refill station, but there's loads across the country. And this kind of replaces that old-fashioned service where we used to have water filters available in the public domain or along the high street. Lincoln may have had one in the past, but it's very expensive to maintain and not necessarily that hygienic. So that's a really useful app that you can have on your phone to find out whether you can go in and ask to refill your water bottle. And I was amazed to see how many retail businesses in Lincoln have signed up to that. And then other information around donating unwanted furniture, for instance. There's quite a few charities across Lincolnshire that will take unwanted furniture, so there's some links to those. The next section is around sustainable food. We have the Lincolnshire Food Partnerships. There's a load of information on there about the food partnership. If you click on each of these links, we have an Incredible Edible Lincoln group, which is around sharing knowledge and experience about growing food. Information about Lincoln allotments, Lincolnshire Permaculture group, which runs a load of training sessions around permaculture, and the Lincolnshire Seed Collective Cooperative. So and information about composting and how you can get hold of a composter, a reduced price composter. We have a section on water saving tips. Anglian Water offer a load of free kits for people. You just have to know where to go on their website. So we've put a direct link to their website for how you can get hold of some free kits for improving the water efficiency in your home. And how you can buy discounted water butts. And then we've got a section on transport. So there's a load of stuff on here around transport routes, cycle routes in and around Lincoln, all the different cycleways, the hire bike scheme, cycle storage, where you can go and get free and very secure cycle storage. And Richard already mentioned the Go Jauntly app, which I've put on here, which is really useful. So there's also schemes like Park and Ride, Interconnect bus walks, East Midlands Railway train walks. So these are really useful routes, so you can take a bus or a train journey and then do a circular walk route back to the train station or to another train station. Which is quite helpful. And then there's a section on green spaces. This is a Lincoln specific toolkit, so we've just focused primarily on those Lincoln green spaces, but where people can go to enjoy open space in the heart of the city. Lincoln's about 23% of Lincoln is made up of local wildlife sites, of which the vast majority are accessible spaces which you can explore, but they're probably on your doorstep, and some really useful routes that you can on here. There's some more information about how you can get to them by bike or walking, and pathways and routes that you can get around. We also have a link to all the community groups. There's quite a lot of community groups in and around Lincoln that people aren't necessarily aware of. So we've got links to the various community groups that are active, including Transition Lincoln, XR Lincolnshire, I've mentioned Incredible Edible, Permaculture, Plastic Free Lincoln, Lincoln Fairtrade City, Lincoln Conservation Group, Green Synergy, and Compassionate Lincoln. Compassionate Lincoln do a really good collection service. If you've got any surplus items, they're usually do a request for items for people, particularly people who've maybe just arrived in the country. They might be through refugee status, and they've tried to establish a home here, and where you can they collect items from people, children's toys, furniture, that kind of thing, and redistribute those to people who need them. And then finally, we've just got a section on sustainable businesses, which I've recently just added to. So this is a link to the which isn't the latest version, but I've added some more businesses onto this page. So these are places that you can go, that they supply sustainable products, and again they're generally Lincoln based. And then we're just asking people, what we want is for this toolkit to grow and expand, so we can add as much information on here as is available. So what we're asking people to do is to send us the links, send us any information if you'd like to add that to the toolkit. And the email address is the lincolnclimatecommission@gmail.com. But we have a website, which if you just Google Lincoln Climate Commission, you'll find a link to this toolkit, but you'll also find the latest newsletter. We do quarterly newsletters with information about events and activities that are happening around Lincoln. We have the roadmap to zero carbon Lincoln, which is a projection of our targets of net zero by 2030 and how we're going to achieve that, and more details about how you can be part of the commission, or if you don't want to be part of the commission, come along to some of the events that we're organising, of which there'll be a whole stream of events, starting with one on Monday, which is the Road to Net Zero, which is being hosted at the University of Lincoln. So if you want any information, search it out on the Climate Commission website. And that's it from me.
Thank you, Kate. What another really interesting presentation. Loads and loads of information there. I'm sure Richard is already plotting his next 50 ideas. I thought there's so many things in there. And it just feels like this is perhaps the next scale up from that parish level activity. You know, City of Lincoln is obviously bigger. So this is kind of how, you know, that next scale can work and collaborate together. So it was really interesting to see how all those different county-wide links, but then those specific city links are also feeding into all of that work. And then I scribbled down, oh yeah, no, I thought the energy tracer link on there, I thought that's kind of the next, that's the next move on, isn't it, from when you are buying a green tariff. You know, so it's not just enough to actually be purchasing green energy, but actually how can I make sure that I'm using green energy? So yeah, so I like that in terms of that informed, conscious consumer element, again, about, you know, actually I want to be actively aware of what I'm using when I'm using, and take control, sort of empowering people to take control of those decisions. So thank you for that. And then our last speaker of the evening is Roberta from Plastic Free Sleaford. So Plastic Free Lincoln's been mentioned a couple of times, but there's quite a few plastic free communities within Lincolnshire now, and Roberta is the community leader for Plastic Free Sleaford. So welcome.
Hi, well, I'm going to try and share my screen. Apologies if this doesn't work. Let me just get that in the background. I think I've got it. Sorry, I'm not back to start. Is that showing up on screen? Cool. Have we got that?
Yep, that's all coming up brilliantly.
Brilliant, thank you. Stressful moment there. So hiya, yeah. So I was drafted in at the last minute. So I currently run Plastic Free Sleaford, which is part of the Plastic Freeze communities, which is overseen overall by Surface Against Sewage. So you may have come across them in the news recently. So yeah, here's just our pictures of our logos. So who are we? So we're part of a national campaign. We're led by volunteers. Basically, all of us are really passionate about change. Our focus is on removing unnecessary single-use plastic. We make that really clear. We know plastic has a purpose in life, but it's the single-use plastic that we're focused on. So the campaign, yes, overseen by Surface Against Sewage, who are raising awareness not only of the issues caused by water companies, but also thinking about locally how life in villages, towns and cities is impacting on what ends up in the waterways. So single-use plastics. What are single-use plastics? I'm sure we're all pretty well aware of that now. So a product that is used once, often sadly for a very short period of time, and then put in the bin or dumped on the road. So just a quick question to get you thinking, what single-use plastics do you use daily? And here's some examples of things that you may come across to see other people using. A little quiz if you want to. How long do you think some of these take to break down? So we've got your sort of traditional water bottle, single-use plastic bag, nappies, cigarette butts, and then I've just put as a sort of comparison a banana skin. I've got the answers later on in the presentation. There's just a quick bit of information about the life cycle of plastics. I'll come back to that a bit more later. So what's all the fuss? We hear everyone sort of criticising plastic, but why? So I've kind of glazed over. So it's a short period of time that they use to break down, and raising awareness that plastic doesn't just simply disappear. We get very much caught into this cycle of recycling and thinking it's okay. But it doesn't. It breaks down, it becomes microplastics. These are the tiny particles that are usually about less than 5 millimeters in size, polluting our waterways and oceans. Some people state that by 2050, the amount of plastic in the sea may well outweigh fish if we continue in the current trend, which is obviously quite a staggering thing to think about. Obviously the impact on animals. They eat these particles, whether they mistake them for food or they're just absorbed in through the methods by which they eat. And also you've got to think about the demands on the Earth's resources to make plastic in the first place. So there's just a picture showing, I'm just sort of backing up what I've just said. So you may have heard again in the press about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is now believed to be 4 times the size of Germany. And it's not quite like in the picture where it's big chunks of plastic. This is microplastics we're talking about, which is making the sea into some sort of horrible gloopy soup. So back to what we do. So as a plastic-free community, as leaders, we organise events, quite often things like litter picks. You've heard a little bit about what Plastic Free Lincoln are doing. They've had repair cafes running. They regularly host webinars. Plastic Free Sleaford, we're a bit smaller. We're not quite as advanced in our ways as Lincoln, but we're getting there. We try to organise events, attend and speak at environmental awareness events, hence this evening. We've run quite busy social media pages offering support and advice for plastic-free living. And I think most importantly, we work alongside businesses, schools and local community groups. We're not there to preach, we're there to support and help people find different ways of doing things. We're all about building links with our local councils and people with the power to make change happen. We can make the suggestions, but we don't really have a great deal of power to make things change. And it's been really good hearing some of the other people speaking about their links already with Plastic Free Lincoln. So thinking about what we can do as individuals, we can choose to refuse single-use items. This is what we're putting across in our social media. This is what the campaign's about. When we've got time, we are talking to businesses, but as an individual, if you're passionate enough, you can go and speak to business as well and query why are you using that? Are you thinking about changing this item, giving them solutions and options of things they could change to? We can all make simple changes in our life, like refilling from I've got some pictures of many refill stores that are popping up and around Lincolnshire. Things like taking your own shopping bag, shop locally, and of course come and support us, support our local plastic free community. I put the banners up there. So in Lincolnshire at the minute, we've got plastic free Sleaford, got plastic free Boston, there's one in Horncastle, and obviously there's the Lincoln one as well. Okay, there's some of I talked about some of the refill shops that are popping up. So we've got Sleaford, Mother Nature, you've got a few in Lincoln, got one in Grantham, that's Bare Planet, one in Woodall Spa, and one over near Gainsborough. Okay, so it's really exciting to see businesses changing. Here's some top tips for living with less plastic. I quite like the hierarchy diagram showing you sort of the most preferred ways of changing, and then sort of the least preferred. So what can you do as a business? I'm not sure who we have attending tonight, but if anyone listening is part of a business or a community group, the perfect opportunity to get in touch with your plastic free community and sign up to become either a champion business or a plastic free ally. Basically what you do for a business is one of my businesses here. You audit your single-use plastic items, eliminate 3 of them and replace them with sustainable swaps. And we can guide you through that. If you want any questions, just email us, chat to us through Facebook or social media, and we can talk about possible changes. As an ally, you sign to the pledge to remove 3 single-use items. And then find ways to support our campaign. It might be joining in with some of our litter picks. It might be having us to come in and speak with you, or maybe take things into your own hands and hold your own events. Schools is really good. We've got a few schools on board now. They sign up directly with Surfers Against Sewage. If they're already an eco school, that counts, and we can sign them up as an ally to help with our campaign. Going slightly bigger as a council or business, really important, and I think it is happening, is that they work with us with our campaigns. After all, because this plastic free status isn't just to make us feel good, it's for the town. It's a brilliant advertisement for the town and for your sustainability. Everything that you're trying to put together to do, we can contribute to that. If it hasn't been done already, one of the things that you have to do as a council to support the campaign is declare a climate emergency, which I'm sure many of you know means prioritising all things environmental. But an interesting thing that came up in a conversation the other day is thinking about finances. Somebody mentioned it just earlier in their presentation. Thinking about how the finances are run within a business. Are you using a finance company that's actively supporting fossil fuels? So something like that. I've put a link there for a company called positivemoney.org. They've got a bit more information. I know nothing about finances, I'm not going to pretend, but I thought that was actually really interesting. If you can get to the root of everything, it's all well and good changing what you do, but if you get right down to the bottom of it, and everything that you do is working towards sustainability. Most importantly, I think for anyone is to lead by example. If others can see what you're doing, then they can follow. There's the answers. I'm sure you've been dying for it for the quiz. So plastic bottle, 450 years, quite staggering. Plastic bags, 10 to 20 years, but it's the fact that they could become 2 million microscopic fragments of plastics, quite frightening. And then you compare that to the banana, which ideally we don't want to throw into the environment, but 2 to 5 weeks. And I like this quote: there's no such thing as a way. When we throw anything away, it must go somewhere. So I'm nearly finished. I'm nearly finished rambling. So feel free to ask any questions. I know we've got that coming up a little bit. And just sort of a little positive thing to leave you on. So we don't need a handful of people doing zero waste perfectly. If everyone, millions of us, are doing it imperfectly, that all starts to contribute to things going a lot better. Thank you for listening.
Lovely. Thank you, Roberta. That was a really interesting presentation as well. I think we've had a fantastic panel tonight. So I want to thank everybody for presenting and telling us about your patch and what you're doing to make a difference, and giving other people ideas on how they can get involved. So yeah, so as Roberta said, we've got time for Q&A now. So if people want to start putting questions into the Q&A box, that would be great. And then we can put them up to the panel. Just a couple of points of reflection that I had on Roberta's presentation. I loved what she said about sort of kind of that people power thing. Go, you know, if you're in a business and you want to ask them what they're doing, ask them some questions, but also offer solutions. So may try and make it a positive conversation rather than one where you're going up to a business and making them feel small or making them feel as though they're doing something wrong. Actually, you know, offering those solutions is a really positive way of engaging people in that conversation. So I thought that was a really good comment to make. Yeah, so thank you very much for that. Right, now I've got to try and look at different screens. So let me pull up the Q&A. Okay, so I've got a question here from Pauline that says she's thoroughly enjoyed all the presentations and highlighting the needs and many of the developments presented, although some of them are in their early stages. She hasn't heard anything about the benefits associated to our health by living in a cleaner environment. I guess our panel are not health experts, but yeah, there is definitely a clearer link, certainly when it comes to transport and having those cleaner air within our urban areas. There's definitely a positive health benefit to that. We did, if I remember rightly, I think one of our presentations yesterday as part of the Lincolnshire Climate Summit online webinars did make reference to that. So in fact, Pauline, I shall say that if you want some data on that, some stats on that, then it might be worth looking back on the Green Master Plan website for the recording of yesterday's presentation, where we were talking about sustainable transport solutions for businesses, because there was definitely a reference made to clean air and the cost to the NHS for health-related illnesses due to toxic air. And we've just had another question pop in from Craig Long. He says, are bioplastics part of the solution, or should we be looking at alternative materials? Roberta, I don't know if you want to take this one first.
I don't know a lot of the science about it, but I know in previous conversations that I've been in, that bioplastics, especially surface against sewage, are a bit anti that now, as they're not really solving the problem, and it's confusing the recycling stream. So people are thinking maybe that can go into plastic recycling, or maybe that can go into a compost, and composting needs sort of specialized conditions. So my instinct is to say no, it's just replacing something with something else rather than looking at a solution. But unfortunately, I don't know enough about the science of it. I just know that Surface Against Sewage have said no to bioplastics.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that point, Roberta, that bioplastics are fine in theory, but they need the right processing facilities. So you've got to ensure that that plastic or that bioplastic you're putting onto the market will end up in those facilities, and that's where it's really challenging. So yeah, so I think that you're right. The Surface Against Sewage say that that's just replacing one single-use problem with another, and if it also then ends up in the standard recycling stream, it can actually then act as a contaminant, so it can cause more harm than good. So the solution is to move up the waste hierarchy and to try and avoid that plastic in the first place. So, you know, is there a way that you can use a container that can be refilled? Is there a way that you can eliminate that source of packaging, that container in the first place? Yeah, so we haven't got questions pouring in. Come on, people, there's loads of you on this webinar. You must have things to ask, things that you want to ask of our panel. How can community groups get involved? You've been inspired, you're a parish councillor, you want to start thinking about climate change strategy. How might you start those ideas? Otherwise, I'm going to ask these questions.
Vanessa, could I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely, go for it, Richard.
Yeah, so it's a question I guess to Roberta and to Kate. One of the things that we're thinking about sort of for our next stage in the village is trying to engage with businesses, and whether there might be some sort of a parallel to the plastic-free pledges that businesses can make. So whether there might be like something else we can come up with about, businesses making a similar series of commitments about climate change. So that might be looking at their banking arrangements or how people travel to their business. I'm just wondering if you've got any advice about how best to go about that. I guess in Lincoln, you've got things like Lincoln Big as an organization that you can kind of provide you an entry point to have those conversations with businesses, but we don't really have anything like that in the village here, or I guess in other rural communities. So I just wonder if you've got any advice about how best to start having those conversations with businesses.
Shall I go first? Yeah, just there are a whole stream of pledges out there that you can find for aimed at businesses, and one of them is we're going to be talking about on Monday at the Road to Zero event, which is organised by Planet Mark. It's a tour across the whole of the UK, but it's picking up all of those carbon journeys throughout the country as part of the build up to COP26, the Climate Commission event in Glasgow in November. And they're collecting stories from businesses, but they're asking businesses to sign a pledge as well. So various commitments. So I'd be happy to send you the links to that information. You can come along to the event, but you can join online as well. But there'll be some follow-up information out of that, which I'd be happy to share. And just sort of, just to expand that into schools, one of the things that we're promoting, particularly in Lincoln schools, is the Let's Go Zero campaign, which schools can sign up to. So it's not over commitment on schools because there's so much pressure on their time, and it's the same with businesses as well. But it's signposting them to things that they can be part of. They can receive all the resources, all the information, templates, toolkits, which they can use in school. So it's a similar setup for schools and businesses that are out there, and I'm happy to send you those.
The only thing I could add is that if you're not already, because Plastic Free Lincoln is obviously such a massive area, I'm assuming that Nettleham could be incorporated into that. So are you an ally of Plastic Free Sleaford?
No, I don't think we are at the moment.
So that's maybe something to look at, a partnership there. I don't know if I can't imagine they're going to turn you down. They've got so many allies to try and get to achieve their campaign. So if you were maybe working alongside them, they sign you up as an ally. By sort of default, they could then award the businesses that are looking for the business champion plaques and certificates. It could go sort of via both of you, if that makes sense. So you're introducing the businesses to Plastic Free Lincoln, they're getting the award, but you're almost like the middle person doing the engaging. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, we've had a question for Kim. What innovative solutions have we found for heating and powering a centuries-old castle? I know that's a really easy one, and you're going to be really pleased I've asked you to answer that one first.
Yeah, well, I think, to be honest, this is going to be the biggest challenge, and it's a big contributor to our carbon footprint, but it's going to be a big issue that's going to require a big conversation. Our heating is a huge contributor to our carbon footprint, and there are a number of other people that are going to be involved in a discussion around that, because it's not just going to be limited to Lincoln Castle. We have Historic England, who are a key stakeholder in those discussions. So I think, our focus as we've embarked on this journey, as Richard has said with Nestleham, we're very much at the start of ours as well, has been on gathering that picture of where our current benchmark is. And in doing that, that's helped us to identify some of the slightly less challenging, quicker wins that have been able to kind of start chipping away at our footprint as a whole. But it is going to be a big challenge, and it's not just going to be limited to us and our venue.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the main thing that we picked up from that was the solutions for sustainable heating in a scheduled monument are really challenging. Things like air source heat pumps are going to be less readily acceptable to all stakeholders at the castle. So it needs to involve those conversations with everybody about actually the long-term conservation of these sites and what that's going to look like in the future. So it's not just that sensitivity to today's standards, but if we still want the castle to be around in another 800 years, what do we need to be doing now to preserve its future? So yeah, so the options are air source heat pumps or electric heating, and neither of that, well, the electric heating is not normally a standard recommendation, but to go to an electric boiler, but those are the kinds of things that we're looking at, but they're not going to be easy solutions to install, and it's going to take a while to get there. But we've given ourselves 9 more years, haven't we, Kim? So we can crack that nut in that length of time, hopefully. And then we've had another question come in. I don't know if Richard wants to take this one. So can parish councils work with their neighbouring parishes to work across a wider area?
Yeah, I would say yes. We've certainly reached out to some neighbouring parish councils about some issues that kind of cross our 2 boundaries. So we've been looking at things like cycle tracks that might connect us to other local villages. Our particular situation is that Nettleham is surrounded by a number of other settlements that don't have as many facilities as Nettleham does because it's a bigger village. So people that might live in neighbouring villages might still travel to Nettleham to access a shop or a library or a doctor or a church or whatever it is. And so we need to be, I think, building partnerships with those neighbouring parishes to look at things like how people might travel here. I think I mentioned about Nettleham. We need to sort of flip it on its head a little bit and think about Nettleham as a destination as well as an origin for journeys. I think this certainly one of the projects I'm working on at the moment is trying to create a new permissive footpath between here and another village, and again that will cross an administrative boundary between the 2 parishes, and you know, we're both going to need to liaise with local landowners to see if we can persuade them to give us permissive access for people to walk across their land. And perhaps if the 2 of us join forces, we might you know, have more of an impact like that. The final thing I'd say is, you know, there's also lots of good ideas out there that other parishes are doing. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Cherry Fields development that Cherry Willingham Parish Council have been working on. I talk about it quite a lot to other people because I just think they've done such a fantastic job of creating this space with so many things to do in it. So yeah, there's lots to be inspired by as well. But yeah, for certain, there's definitely scope for working with other organisations, and I think it's crucial to be building those relationships and acting together.
Yeah, I think that's really sage advice. There's a follow-up question for you as well. It says, did you experience any resistance from the council or the community when trying to start the Nettleham climate change strategy? And if there was, how did you overcome that?
Well, I originally pitched the idea of a Nettleham climate change strategy as a resident, and I went to the parish council and sort of pitched it as a resident. And I'm not sure the parish council were that ready to sort of take it on at that level. And so my story is that I kind of became a parish councillor, a vacancy opened up, and then once I was a parish councillor, I was able to put forward a strategy. But once that had been done, I think the parish council have been very supportive of it. Other councillors have been supportive and helpful with it. So I wouldn't say that there's been any, I don't think I'd say I've experienced any resistance. Sorry, was there a second part of the question?
It was just that if there was resistance, how did you overcome that? But actually, I think your answer there kind of answers another question that's coming from Claire that said, so she says she's heard about all the good work happening in Nettleham. What's the best place to find out what other councils are doing, and if necessary, nudge them to do more? So I think you know, the point you said is, you know, that you became a councillor, you pitched the idea as a resident and they weren't too enthusiastic, so the next step was to become that councillor yourself. So I think that's probably a way for Claire to get involved within her communities.
I think the other thing that probably I would say then is as well is that I think I mentioned in my presentation that almost all of the things on our list of things that are designed to try and reduce our carbon emissions have another benefit as well. So it might be that if we can develop another green space and plant some trees in the village, it might help, you know, sequester a bit of carbon, but also it might create another amenity for residents in the village. If we can set up some sort of a community auction, well, that might help us reduce you know, things that are thrown away and reuse items, but also it might be kind of fun to have a community auction and build a bit of community cohesion, and you know, people might get a bargain or whatever. And so that, like, there's different, I think, you know, if projects can tick a number of boxes, that also helps, you know, with the arguments of persuasion of trying to, you know, push them forward.
Yeah, I think, you know, like you said, you touched upon that earlier, those multiple benefits. It's about appealing to the driver of that audience that you're speaking to. So, you know, it's always been the way with sustainability and climate change, is that we've not always won hearts and minds on the climate change angle, but we've found those other drivers for our audience to help get these things started, and then once they're in place, they normally roll along a bit more smoothly. We have had another question in about encouraging people to cycle when the speed limits on many of our roads are 40 miles an hour. I'm not sure that, again, the panel is the right one for that, so I'm happy to take that question away and send an, well, unfortunately you've not left your contact details, but I'm happy to take that question away and try and find an answer. We might be able to post that on our website or on our social media platforms and see if we can answer that question for you. That's not my area of expertise at all to answer those questions. Oh, hang on, there's something else that's come up here. Excuse me. Oh, no, okay, so I know who's brought that question's now got contact details to it, so that's fine. So we can follow that one up for you and try and post an answer on our social media platforms, I think. If I'll give it another couple of minutes to see if there's any more questions that have come in. I had a couple, so let me just see if there's any that haven't already been answered. Oh, I had a question for Kim. So how would she suggest, if there's community groups or people that want to get their local cultural attractions involved, or get them to start thinking about your people, place and program kind of ideas, how would you think that people might be able to get involved? Is it about collaborating with your services, or can they take some of those ideas, some of those themes and implement them themselves?
I'm really sorry, Vanessa, you broke up in the midst of that. But I think you asked about how can interested local community groups almost kind of lobby their local cultural attractions to participate in similar schemes that we've done. Is that right?
Yeah,
sorry.
So it's more about, because I just think it's the collaboration that you're creating with community groups, I think, is a really sort of intrinsic way of being able to engage with wider audiences, getting people to think about sustainability in a much more holistic way. So if people live in villages or towns that, you know, they might have an attraction, but it's not necessarily an LCC run attraction, how could they start to embody some of those principles, or start to use their attraction as that focal point?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd certainly say that from across the sector, that there's absolutely an awareness and receptiveness to the roles and responsibilities that cultural attractions like ours have in kind of contributing to organisations' journeys to net zero. So I generally think, you know, it's just to have the conversation. It genuinely is, and I think those conversations spark the ideas. And I go back, Vanessa, to when me and you first met, and I think you kind of knocked on the gates of the castle almost and said, we want you to sign up to Plastic Free Lincoln. And what happened and what followed from that was, you know, our site signed up to the pledge, And then obviously, because we are part of a wider service, a wider portfolio of sites, what followed was pretty much a domino effect as well. So it's certainly just about starting the conversation, not being afraid to do that, because I generally think there's such a heightened awareness and receptiveness to the roles that our sites can play as contributors to it.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's giving people that empowerment, I guess, isn't it, to sort of take their own destiny and just make those things happen, ask, and just be a little bit irritating and keep going. So yeah, and then so we've now got another question that's come in. That's so Claire, who lives in Bootham within Lincoln, so she's not part of a parish, but she'd love to see what the interest there is to start a similar strategy in her area. So Kate, maybe, do you think that's something that could be started within kind of the ward level at City of Lincoln, or is it about being involved with the Climate Commission?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it could be a bit of both. There are there's, because Lincoln is made up of wards rather than parishes, we probably have groups that you could connect to, or you may already be part of, like sort of Friends of Bootham Park, who have that sort of shared interest and could expand some of the work that they're doing across the area. Being part of the Lincoln Climate Commission, Lincoln's a very small city, so it's got a small population. So the aim of the commission is to bring all communities together. I'm a resident of Bootham as well, so I live in Bootham Ward. And there is some useful data now available at a ward level. Getting data on the carbon footprint was always on a local authority area, but there's a tool now that breaks it down into ward areas and parishes. So it's a little bit easier to look at your local area in a little bit more detail and identify where the carbon footprint might be higher in Bootham than it perhaps is in a neighbouring ward. There's a really useful toolkit that shows you the tree coverage in your area, and that breaks down. Unfortunately, only Lincoln is mapped, so there's not much mapped outside of Lincoln at the moment, but Lincoln has been mapped, and it'll show you the exact percentage of tree coverage in your area. So if you're from a particular ward, Lincoln has a very high tree coverage compared to when you go out of the city. But if you have an area that's a lower tree coverage, you might want to look at projects to do with that. But I would connect up with some of your ward councillors, or through your sort of groups that are already existing in Lincoln, and I'd be very happy to put you in touch with some of those groups if you're not already.
Okay, so there you go, Claire. So I think you need to get in touch with Kate and see what might be able to happen in Bootham. And she also says that she has a little library that she does. So is that something that could be put on the sustainability toolkit as well? And I think that's probably a great idea.
Yeah, we'd love to add that. So yeah, please send anything through to me, and I'll add that. That would be great.
And then as a follow-up, we've had another question that asks, are there any plans to make the sustainability toolkit more county-wide, or is that something that each district might need to take on themselves? I
have spoken to all of the district councils. We have a good network, don't we, Vanessa, between the county and the district councils. And I've offered them that they can use the template of the toolkit. They wouldn't necessarily have to update all of it, because some of it's national and county-wide information anyway. But to add that local touch, I think is quite nice. And the toolkit costs nothing to set up, so it's something that I'm more than happy to share with anybody as a template, and you can add your own photos and links to it. It's just set up through Adobe Spark. So if you Google Adobe Spark, and I looked at lots of different web-based formats, and I found them all way too complicated and were taking too time-consuming, until I came across Adobe Spark, which is absolutely brilliant. Anybody can do it. It's really, really simple. Yeah, I have been talking to the other districts about that. So I think it would be great to widen it across outside of Lincoln. It's probably a little bit too much information to put everything on one toolkit, but to break it down across the districts would be probably would be quite more user friendly. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Sort of district level is probably the right scale, isn't it? If it's county-wide, it gets too difficult to see where the bits that are closest and most relevant to you sit. So yeah, let's hope that we can get that rolling out through the districts. Then we'll add that as another one of our to-do list. No, that's brilliant. I think I've clicked answer on all the questions that have come through. So thank you very much, everybody. I want to thank the panel again for sharing their time, sharing their slides. It's been really interesting. I've really enjoyed listening to all of your presentations, and I want to thank everybody that's joined us tonight. Again, we were saying just before the start, this is an awkward time, so either everybody's wolfed down their dinner early or is famished and ready to go, so I won't ramble on much longer, and I shall let everybody sign off and enjoy the rest of their Wednesday evening. Just to say that the recording of this webinar will be available on the Green Master Plan web pages of the County Council website, and we are hosting the in-person event of the Lincolnshire Climate Summit on October the 13th at the Epic Centre at the Lincolnshire Showground. So if anybody wants to participate and join us in person, we've got a really good lineup of speakers again there on the day, with a keynote from Lord Deben from the Climate Commission. So if you would like to join us, you would be very welcome, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.